So the first item on the agenda is apologies. Joe.
Thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Jones, and we've got Councillor Brown in attendance for her.
Okay, lovely. Welcome, Councillor Brown, or Andrew Brown. Declarations of interest. Do we have any interest to be declared this evening? Mark, Councillor Roxy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I have to declare an interest on PLA 042. Arts for Rutland actually gave a grant to the Morris when we went to Albania. So I will be, if we get into any specific detail about that particular grant, then I will not take part in the debate.
Okay, thank you. Petitions, deputations and questions, Joe.
Sorry, Chair. No, we haven't received any.
Okay, although none have been received through the governance team, I've received some emails from members of the public, which I forwarded on to the panel prior to this meeting, concerning the arts budget to be read and considered in our discussion, if that's okay. Questions with notice from members, Joe?
No, none received, Chair.
Okay. So we go on to budget savings 21-22. So item 6, the main item on the agenda. Sav, I'll hand over to you at this point. We also have Oliver, Lucy and Karen, the portfolio holders for our area, in attendance to answer our questions. So over to you, Sam. Sav.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say a few words by way of introduction. Apologies for those who may have heard me give a little introduction last night. There may some of the things may be quite similar, but in any event. So members will recall that in February time we approved a budget with a gap of about £2.4 million, and that gap was propped up by general fund and earmarked reserves. At that time, and I think all members understand this, that is extremely poor practice. We must live within our means, and we mustn't rely for an indefinite amount of time on those reserves which we've managed to cultivate for some time. We said in setting that budget, we said, well, we must try and affect our position pretty quickly, and one of the targets that we set ourselves was to reduce that in-year reliance of £2.4 million by at least £1 million. That was the target that we set at that time. And we said, obviously, to start that process, we would look at every line of the budget and see what we could do in the short term. And that's what we've been doing for the last few months. I have to say, it's been a really busy start to the year. The officers are still heavily involved in doing work in relation to the pandemic response. We've had other things to deal with, other big priorities like the local plan and HIF, and there are other big projects also underway in relation to waste and leisure, and highways is just kicking off. But nevertheless, we were able, thanks to the work of all officers really, to look through the budget and come up with a series of proposals. Some proposals that you have in front of you tonight, proposals that we want to get on with very quickly. And we also identified a series of longer term projects where a lot of further work is needed to be done before we get to a place where we can take costs out of the budget. Members will see that the table in the report summarises the results of that work and says that if everything went to plan, then we may be able to achieve a 2.4 million reduction in the budget if everything went to plan. The key for 21-22 is to deliver the savings that we've set out in the report, alongside progressing the other work that we need to do to bring further savings to Cabinet and Council for decisions. And of course, alongside that, we need to manage our budget well in 21-22 be very cost conscious and make sure we don't spend any more than we need to. I think I mentioned the waste and leisure projects had started, and some of the longer term projects that are highlighted in the report have started, but not all. And one of the things that we need to consider quickly, certainly from a management team point of view, is what can we do to accelerate some of those projects, potentially bring in external resource if we have the capacity to commission and manage it appropriately. And that's something we'll be thinking about in due course. Ideally, from my point of view, I would be very happy if we could kick off more projects that are going to deliver savings, but I'm also realistic. An authority of our size that's continuing with the pandemic, that has to deliver business as usual, and some other key priorities, there's only so much I think we can take on, and that's a big challenge and a risk for us. In relation to 22-23, then we're still aiming to be in a position where our reliance on reserves is only £1 million, but I don't feel massively confident about whether we can achieve this. I think we're doing as much as we can at this moment in time. There's still uncertainty around funding and what our funding settlement might be for next year, and there are pressures emerging. Pressures that clearly mean that we'll have to deliver a lot more savings than what we've got thus far. I think against the backdrop of all the work that we've done, it's increasingly important that all the spare capacity of officers is absolutely focused on what we can do to deliver some of the longer term and strategic projects. And obviously that's something members can help with in terms of when we're looking at agendas and looking at the work programme. The more we can do to prioritise the financial gap work, the better from our point of view. In relation to the paper you have tonight, then there are some short-term proposals which officers have come up with. I didn't say this last night, but I'll say it tonight. The decisions that we're asking, we'll ask council to make in due course in relation to the proposals that are in Appendix B are what I would call some of the more straightforward decisions, actually, certainly relative to some of the real tough decisions we're going to have to make going forward. I know that members know that we've made substantial savings over the last few years, and saving £2.5 million from our budget is not going to be straightforward. Some of the decisions you have in front of you in the short term are some of the more straightforward decisions. And I don't mean that in a way that's flippant about the decisions and the impacts they may have in some areas, but certainly relative to some of the decisions we might have to make going forward, they are some of the more straightforward issues. In terms of those proposals that you have in front of you, I think, and I'd hope the members agree, that they really do epitomise the principles we've set out in the report. There is no doubt that as we move forward, the council will look different to what it does today. We will provide fewer services, if that's the right expression, always trying to maintain, of course, that high quality. We will expect our community and residents to try and do more for themselves. I think that's a direction of travel, and clearly where we can charge for services, we will look to do that so that those who receive those services pay for them. So tonight, members have the opportunity to comment on the proposals before they make their way to Cabinet and then ultimately to all members of Council to make a decision to revise the budget or not. I won't say any more at this stage, Chair, and obviously pass over to you to facilitate the substantive debate and the questions.
Thank you very much, Saz. Who would like to go first? I'd like to, if we could, I'd like to keep to the order that we went through on the pre-meet and the order that's actually in the schedule Appendix B. So if we could
Chair, if I may interrupt, sorry, just I've had a message from Councillor Beggy. He's just he forgot to declare an interest, so I just want to.
Okay. Councillor Beggy.
Want to go ahead?
So yes, my wife used to be part of Arts for Rutland and for the Oakland Festival, so I won't take part in that part of the debate.
Thank you. So moving on, if we could go through sort of like in the order of the Appendix B, if we could. We did have, for the members of the public and that are online, we did have a pre-meeting to go through some of the things that we were quite happy with and some of the things that we wanted to discuss in detail. Obviously, it's quite a long list to go through. And so anyway, if I could go over to the panel to bring up the first one that we wish to discuss in more detail, which was RES 001, which was the finance, revenue and benefits, the saving of 40,000. Who would like to go first? Gordon, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair. Before we get on to the appendices, just on the report itself, just like to ask a couple of questions on that. And paragraph 2.62, we're looking at this in the big picture. I just wonder where we stand with the year end. I appreciate we've got a bit of work to do, and Andrew and Sav have still got a lot of work to do to get to the end. But has the position worsened significantly? Because that would have an influence on our thoughts and comments as we move forward tonight. So that from where we were at Q3, of course. And then the second point is, I don't think we can just jump over spending £328,000 in external support and ignore that. I think it's something that we should comment on. And from my point of view, I feel that is a very big sum of money in relation to the 2.5 million that we've got to try and find a saving on. I feel very uncomfortable with that sum, particularly since there's no details given. It's just a big lump sum. Want to spend 328, external support, hope to make some savings. Does that sound good? And to me, it doesn't sound good. So maybe Sav, or yeah, it's only Sav this evening, or one of the portfolio holders would like to comment on those 2 points.
I will pick up those points. In terms of the outturn, then we don't have a position at the moment. The outturn is significantly more complicated this year because of the various grants we've received from government, some of which are quite last minute. So I hope to have a position by the time that the report makes its way to Cabinet, but I don't have a position as of today. From what I can see thus far, we will have an underspend at the year end, which is, I can't be precise on the amount, but I don't believe it will be that dissimilar to where we were at Q3, but we still need to dot the I's and cross the T's on that. In relation to the issue about external support, I think I refer back to the comment I made in my introduction. What I'm very clear about in my own mind is that it would be fantastic if we could accelerate work so that we're able to bring proposed savings proposals to members to make decisions. I'm very clear in my mind about that. It would be great if we could accelerate the work. However, and one option, of course, is to bring in external support to help us, or as a reference, I think Councillor Waller mentioned last night, we could release internal capacity by backfilling. There are a range of arrangements we could put in place at some form of cost to actually accelerate some of those proposals. I think one of the points I mentioned last night is, whilst that's something that we'd like to do, if Cabinet and Council said to me, you can spend up to £500,000, at this moment in time, I certainly wouldn't sanction any spend, because I don't feel, with the priorities that we are dealing with the issues around the pandemic, with the other projects that we've got going on, I don't believe that we could make the best use. We're in a position to commission properly what we need, to supervise that resource, to direct it and lead it appropriately to ensure that we get what we need. So whilst I say in principle, it would be fantastic to have the facility to draw down funds to enable us to do it, I think you have to have sufficient capacity internally to commission properly and manage that resource. And I don't believe we're in that place at the moment. And part of the reason why I asked for the delegation for myself is so I can effectively control that budget myself, rather than it being in the hands of those service areas that may want to accelerate some of the work. So the request obviously there is no detailed proposals alongside it for the reasons I say, is that we're not at that stage yet. But I think, would I like the capability to act quickly if I thought there was a good opportunity to do work that would generate savings and make a difference? Yes, I would like that capability. But as I say, at this moment in time, I certainly wouldn't use it.
Karen's showing her hand up.
Junior on
Karen,
mute.
would you like to come in?
Yeah. It's just to say,
Not now, sorry.
the ideas in Appendix E, some of them are quite big projects. We've only had a cursory look at them, but if on further investigation they yield big benefits, there are things that we will need to bring forward, and that's why SAV wants that money in his back pocket, so that we have the option, if there is a big yield, to bring that work forward by supplementing it with extra resource. So only there to be used if we need it, if there's a big benefit.
Councillor McCarthy, you have your hand up, and then Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thanks, June. Firstly, I apologise for appearing in silhouette. I've got to sit here while my laptop charges. Hopefully in half an hour or so I'll be able to move around the end of the table and I shall be a little bit more visible. Yeah, I agree with Gordon. I'd made a note of the 328,000 on external support, but I'd also just noted alongside that we're reducing subscriptions and professional fees and memberships and professional fees. I mean, are we taking away with, are we giving with one hand and taking away with the other, I suppose is what I'm thinking there. Is that 328,000 that we're needing to spend, or possibly needing to spend on external support, because we are reducing our own capability in-house through training, professional fees, memberships, subscriptions, etc. So is it in fact, I suppose, in effect a bit of a false saving, because we'll have to just spend the same money elsewhere?
Councillor Payne, would you like to come back on that one?
It's not necessarily to train people, it's to bring in additional resource, because we are quite under-resourced at the moment. So it's not about training, and it's not about subscriptions. It's about bodies to do the work, as far as I'm aware, Sav.
Yes, in relation to what we'd want to get in, if we wanted to bring in external support, the professional subscriptions and budgets that we looked at across the council are effectively dotted around all service areas. They're nothing to do with people's employment packages. They relate to professional support that we get to support the delivery of some services. So, for example, in finance, we have a number of subscriptions to various bodies, subscription to SIPFA for information that's pertinent to us preparing the year-end accounts. In finance, one of the subscriptions that we normally have, you know, it's probably more nice to have than a must do. So we're relinquishing it and we will manage, and through the contacts that I have with other 151 officers, we can source some of the same information. So it's effectively rationalising some of that professional support we get across a number of areas. It wouldn't be the type of support that would help us on the external reviews.
Councillor Brown, do you want to
just check? Yeah, so we're not cutting our own subscriptions and then having to engage outside consultants. That's pretty much what I was getting at, I suppose.
No, they're two quite different things.
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, you've got your hand up. Is that a legacy hand? You're on mute.
I thought it was Councillor Andrew Brown you're looking for. We have to be careful this evening.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
Having spoken already, I thought Andrew's hand was up. My apologies.
Councillor Beggy. Your hand
Thank
is up.
you. Yes, indeed. Can I make the presumption that if any of this 328,000 is to be spent, and some of these larger projects, this will come back to scrutiny before this money is allocated?
It depends on. Pick it up. It depends on what decision's made. If council is minded to delegate the funding to myself in consultation with the chief exec or the portfolio holder for finance, then no, it would not. If members say to me that they would prefer us to ask through cabinet on an ad hoc basis when we need the funding, then of course we will do that. No decision has been made on that. This is all about our ability to act quickly. If we have to go through a cabinet or council approval on each occasion, we would act less quickly. It's a choice for members. I think the issue is whether members feel that 500,000 in my hands to draw down when I believe we need it in consultation with others is a good idea or not. If they don't think it is, you shouldn't approve it. If you think I'm going to waste the money, don't approve it. It's pretty simple.
Can I just ask a question before we bring in Councillor Waller? Will there be on each transaction that's approved, will there be a limit on that? Is there not a limit that has to come for approval?
Not if the sum is delegated to me, of course, unless members put some conditions on that. So members might say, we approve 500,000, but you mustn't spend more than 50,000 on an individual project. If members did that, you could impose whatever conditions they see fit.
Okay. Councillor Waller.
Thank you very much.
I take it that nobody else has any, sorry, Gail. I take it nobody else has any more questions before I invite Gail in? No. Councillor Waller, would you like to come in, please?
Yes, this is just in relation to the main report, these comments. First of all, I think it's absolutely essential that we have a sum of money that can buy in any expertise that we need to further the projects that are itemised in the last appendices to this report. Because with the best will in the world, and even the biggest councils in the world, in-house, there's not going to be sufficient expertise to effectively review some of these services and recontract. So I think it's really important. And the normal practice when we delegate money to an officer is that it's in consultation with portfolio holders. And I think we need to be able to trust our portfolio holders to exercise due diligence in determining whether or not to approve spends. So that's my comment on that specific. But in relation to that, I do recognise in certain areas of the council particularly, we are very short on staff, permanent staff. And I think it's important that we address that. And in order to get ourselves into a good position going forward, I think we would seriously have to consider investing in more, not necessarily permanent staff, it could be 2 or 3 year fixed term contract staff, but people who are employed by Rutland to manage the consultants, because Sav did mention that one of the barriers to moving quickly is the inability, not inability in terms of quality of people, but in terms of numbers, to actually manage consultants. So I think we have to invest to save in that respect. And finally, on the main report, I do think that there must be question marks over some of these savings. For example, we not necessarily savings, but achieving the bottom line, because I mean, COVID is still going on. The swimming pool's not open. How much more are we going to have to give to
Councillor Waller, were we not going through the appendices one by one? You're actually now forwarding.
No, I'm on the main report. I'm on the main report now, June. I'll give you the paragraph. It's paragraph 2.4.5. in the report. And it's the costs that are unknown at the moment. And I was just going to highlight the Stevenage Leisure one. We've had to support them through COVID, may have to in the future. And so I think our position is nerve-wracking, to say the least. And so what I was going to ask was that scrutiny going forward, the meetings are timed in such a way that they can effectively scrutinize the quarterly budget reports. That was all I was going to ask on that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Rizal, you have your hand up. Did you want a final comment?
Yeah, sure, Chair, apologies. I was just reading through my notes when Councillor Waller put her hand up and I didn't want to interrupt. So I think, Sav, you've been really clear with your guidance so far. And I don't think any of us would want you to go away tonight with the impression that there's, perhaps a little bit of a lack of trust or anything. That I'm sure that is not the case at all. And I just wondered, in terms of the £500,000 that you talk about, I know it's made up of two separate sums. Is there a reason that you would consider, or is there a reason that you would think that there would need to be a cap of any kind put on you? Because I'm struggling with that, if I'm honest with you.
I have to be honest that the £500,000 figure is not scientific. I just came up with what I thought was a reasonably significant sum that would allow us to potentially, given the nature of some of the projects that we have to deliver and the work involved, and based on some of the other projects and the consultants and how much they're costing, I can see us having to spend reasonable sums if we're going to deliver concrete savings. But I just go back to the comment I made a while ago that I look at how busy officers are now, and if an officer tried to convince me that it would be a great idea to bring in consultant X to help, my answer would be no, because I don't see any officers with any capacity to appropriately commission and manage consultants as it stands today. There is no more difficult person to get money out of than me in this council, and in the projects that we're delivering thus far, we do have consultants helping us, and if one of the, in the spirit of learning lessons, there's no doubt that what we're learning thus far is that, you do need capacity to manage the consultants and get the best out of them. There's no doubt about that, and that's something I haven't lost sight of and as we move forward. But, I understand I would rather spend nothing and deliver lots of savings. That's the truth. And of course, there's a risk. As soon as you bring somebody in to help you, we've got to deliver. We bring somebody in to help us, we put decisions in front of members, and then members say no. It's got us nowhere. So there are risks throughout that whole process, but I certainly wouldn't be spending money too easily with external consultants to support us. I'd have to be really convinced that that was the right thing to do. I'm the one who has to stand up and give the bad messages about where we are financially. I'm the one who'd have to stand up and say, this is how we've spent the £500,000. If anybody thinks I do that easily, they're very much mistaken.
Sam, it's really clear, and I think what you're saying is we shouldn't be looking to spend, despite the risk. We should be looking to save, because that's the message that the whole council has agreed already. Thank you.
If there's no more questions on this section, can we actually now move on to Appendix B, please, the revised offer? So going on to RES 001, the £40,000 saving, which is on finance, revenue and benefits. I think we have some questions on that. Who would like to take that up, please? I can't see any hands.
Unfortunately, I wasn't at the meeting where these questions were written, so I think it should come from somebody who was at the meeting, and then those members who weren't available could perhaps comment after.
Okay, I have Councillor Gordon Brown and Councillor Beggy's hand up. Who was first? Sorry, I didn't see. I was looking at my notes.
Councillor Beggy can go first. I'm quite happy with that.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm just flicking between notes and I couldn't find what I was looking for. As far as RES 001, okay in the main, but how are we going to monitor the impact on residents? And our managers going to be managed to keep on track of their key budget objectives?
Who would like to take that one up, please?
I'll take it. In relation to, I mean, we've had a number of vacancies in the finance team for some time. Because of COVID, we've brought in some external support to help us, but that support will only be here. That support is being paid for by COVID money and will only be here as long as we have additional COVID requirements. Outside of COVID, as I say, we've had some vacancies for some time. We believe that we've been able to successfully do what we need to do whilst managing those vacancies. And so the plan is to try and make that saving permanent. That's what we'll try and do. We take a risk-based approach to the support we give to managers in any event, and that will continue. There's no doubt the finance team are under pressure. There is no doubt about that. Would I prefer not to put the saving forward? Yes, I would. I would rather have the finance team resource, but we've got to make £2.5 million worth of savings. So I've got to look at all the vacancies. In every vacancy that comes up in resources, I ask the question, can we do without? This one, it's not ideal. I don't think there's an impact on residents, but we'll just like we've been doing pre-COVID with the vacancies that have existed, we'll do the best we can.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Beggy?
Yeah, I do, Sav. I understand that there's limited impact on residents. Are you comfortable that actually by not employing this resource, we're not losing the opportunity to actually make greater savings by having a fully resourced finance team?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I'm not sure. Finance works best where it works very closely with service managers to deliver savings, but it's not a replacement for the work that service managers should be doing to take savings themselves. As I said, in an ideal world, I'd rather not lose the resource, but we've got to make £2.5 million worth of savings. I think this is quite an easy decision, actually, in the sense of there's a vacancy there. It's not like I've got to make anybody redundant. Let's try it. And if Andrew, who's sitting here tonight, tells me we're failing to deliver, we'll have to revisit it. But it seems to me a bit of a no-brainer, given that we've managed without the resource for some time to try and make it permanent. But nothing's fixed, is it? Nothing's set in stone.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Beggy? Okay. Councillor Gordon Brown, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Yeah, I fully support what Sav's proposing here. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on finance. That then leads me to the thought that really it's down to the line managers in the service areas who've really got to stand up and monitor their budgets and make sure they're not spending where they don't need to spend. And that's really where I think that question was leading to, the point that I think Nick brought out first of all. I think it's that issue. How can we make sure that the line managers are actually dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, that they are monitoring, monthly? You provide the monthly accounts to them. Are they monitoring those? Can we help them with that? Because I think that would generate savings as well on a month-by-month basis if they are really understanding what they're spending, where they're spending, and where they don't need to spend it. So that really was the point there. And it just, it's the old story. If you're not measuring it, then you're not managing it. And I think they've got to take those measures and manage. Just got
Councillor Beggy, you have your hand up again. No?
Yeah, sorry, just to
Okay,
follow up
yeah.
what Gordon said. I think my question was, I totally agree that the managers should be scrutinising their budget on a day-to-day basis. But having worked in many organisations, normally let's call them the critical friend of finance, looking over their shoulder and questioning every line on that budget that actually brings out savings, which might not necessarily become immediately apparent because they haven't got that tap on the shoulder saying, do you really need to do that? I think that was what the basis of my question to Sav was, is have we got the ability to be that stick beating the managers?
Yeah, I mean, you know, managers are the ones that have been through their budgets to put forward the proposals on the table tonight. So they have identified lots of issues. From a finance perspective, we're breathing down managers' neck all the time. The status and profile of finance has never been higher, as you would expect. And whilst I'm here, it will continue to be so. I'm a very difficult man to keep quiet, and I'm louder than ever at the moment in relation to this topic.
Sav, thank you. I believe that as a marketer, I've had finance on my back all my life, so I'm sure you'll be all over it.
Councillor Oxley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a question with regards to the long-term impact of this decision. Will it be harder year on year if we continue to hold posts vacant? Or will it be, as I say, we'll just have to suck it and see?
I think if managers do what they need to do in terms of managing their budgets, that makes a big difference to the work of finance. A good budget manager, you know, requires very little support, and there are a number of them in the organisation. Some require more support. Our job is to try and bring everybody up to the standard of the best, which is what we're trying to do. But you know, I think we can manage this longer term. But as I say, time will tell. I think if we're an organisation that's £2.5 million smaller in a couple of years' time, that will help.
Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question. It was just really the long-term impact of this decision. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, the next one that we actually brought up was RES 012, which was a £10,000 saving. It didn't seem a lot to us. What's the impact on the non-cash payments by the vulnerable? How are you going to communicate that we're not actually taking cash anymore? How much cash did we take if you deduct the car parking cash receipts? And how will we deal with residents without bank accounts? What does this mean in practice? And we'd also like some explanation on the trial of a Facebook portal to access services directly with a member of the FCT team from libraries, for example. So can somebody explain what this is all about, please? It's a bit unclear.
Yeah, I'll pick it up. Yeah, I know your comment about the 10k saving being small. The CST team is a pretty small team. It's less than 6 people actually, 5.9 FTEs. It's one of the smaller teams of the council. We spend more on governance, we spend more on comms than we do on CST. So it's a pretty small team. And the CST is clearly going to go through some changes. So if you think of the things that we're doing at the moment, so I'm hoping that in June and July, we'll be able to launch My Account, which will be the online portal members can use. I'm hoping that a lot more residents use that and then have less of reliance on the phone line and on sending in emails. I'm also, we're doing some work about relation to the website to try and make that more user-friendly so that the public can use that better rather than have to phone in and do things. And I think as we start to see some changes in the way people interact with the council, it may well be that we can make further savings in the area of customer services. But in the short term, some of the saving that we might get from reducing the phone hours, which is what's said in the proposal, we will reinvest in the online support. So it's about the web, social media, where it's about supporting residents who want to use the My Account. So that's the reason why the saving is small. But as I say, in relation to that team, it's not a big team or expensive team in any event. Believe it or not, in relation to cash, the council made a decision years ago to stop taking cash, believe it or not, but it was never truly enforced. We don't really take much cash payments. And actually, for those who want to still use cash, we do have a mechanism by which they can do that. So if you, for example, want to pay your council tax in cash, then you would see Andrea. Andrea would give you an all-pay card, and then you would go to a shop, the post office, wherever, anywhere where you saw a pay point symbol, and you can effectively hand over your card and pay cash, and the council gets an electronic file to upload to its systems. So for those who want to pay cash, they can still do so by getting an all-pay card. But we don't take much cash outside of parking, actually, for council tax and other things. It's not something that we do very often. So we will obviously communicate that to people. We'll explain that the all-pay card exists for those who do want to pay cash. That facility will be there. We're not taking that away. In relation to what does the Facebook portal mean, then it will mean that with CST face-to-face being closed, for those people who want to talk to a CST operative, they will be able to do so, for example, using the Facebook. So they might go into Oakland Library and talk to CST via a Facebook portal. It'd almost be like we're doing tonight, the equivalent of Zoom. It's on Facebook, it's a portal, but it'd be like having a Zoom call with a member of CST. We're going to pilot that. If that works well, it may well be that we have different portals in different parts of the county. Maybe in Ketton Library we might have one, or wherever else we might have one, which would enable residents, if they want to have a conversation, a face-to-face or a virtual face-to-face conversation with CST rather than phoning up. So that's what that is. Worked in some other parts of the council are using it for talking to residents. So we thought we would give it a try in relation to CST. So that's what that means. I hope I've answered all your questions. There was quite a lot of them, so forgive me if I haven't.
No, thank you very much, Sav. That was very comprehensive. Does anybody have, we've got a couple of hands up after that. Councillor Andrew Brown, have you got a supplementary?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering, Sav, if you're going to use that portal, because people could be have some sensitive issues they want to talk about. Will it be in a private sort of booth thing, so it is actually private rather than being in a public area of the library?
Yeah. One of the things that we're looking to do, we'll look at the logistics of that. But to be clear, the way we see a lot of services being accessed in the future is by appointment. So, for example, very few of us would walk into our bank and expect to see the bank manager. Very few of us would walk into our solicitors to expect to talk to our solicitor. And actually, a lot of the advice that people want from the council, planning, for example, or might want to talk about a debt situation, or might want to talk about, I don't know, somebody's renewing their taxi license. The idea that people can walk through the council's offices and officers are sitting there waiting to deal with customers in that sense is not very realistic. So what we want to do is make sure that at a convenient time to both the customer and to ourselves, that we can put the right person in front of the customer. So if you want to talk to Andrea about a complex benefit query, we will arrange a meeting for you to do that, and then you've got our undivided attention rather than to hope to catch you on spec. So we see a lot of people's interactions, and the reason I raised that, Councillor Brown, in relation to your comment, is it may well be that that matter that people want to talk about is not something that's suitable for a portal. It may be an appointment they want to book to discuss their particular case, for example. the portal I see being more for general inquiries rather than something very specific. But yeah, I think that's the direction. I want people's interactions with departments to be the right person in front of them so they can deal with all their issues. And I think what we found with the way the system worked pre-COVID, if you want to come in and want benefit advice, there might not be the right person in the office to talk to you. So why don't we offer the customer some appointments which they can choose from, and then they can meet the right person at the right time for them. Yes, it means that somebody isn't there at demand immediately, but as I say, you wouldn't expect it with your bank manager and your solicitor, and I don't think the council staff is any different in that sense. So I see it as enhancing the customer offer and experience by getting the right person in front of them. It just means it might not be straight away.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Andrew Brown?
Yeah, it seems it's the direction of travel is like doctors' appointments. They seem to have gone that way, which seems to work.
The only difference is that we will offer you an appointment quickly at your convenience, which is slightly different to the doctor, I would suggest.
Councillor Ian Rizal, you have your hands up.
I do.
Sorry, Councillor Rizal. Sorry, you didn't hear that.
You're absolutely right. Of course you are. And it's interesting actually, because it leads me on to my question, and I think I have the answer already. This is about offering to folk who perhaps need a different type of service, and that could be down to age, it could be down to disability, it could be down to a range of things. And what we're saying is, this is about social prescribing in a way. We're saying to people, we're going to give you the service that you need, as opposed to the service that has always been available, whether you needed it or not. So it's becoming very, very much focused on people's needs, our people's needs, but it encompasses those who are disabled and all those folk who might struggle in normal cases.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I think from the point of view of, people dropping into CST in terms of face-to-face resource, I think clearly a lot of the visits that we get is stuff that can be done differently and online. Obviously, we don't offer much online at the moment, and that's something we're hoping to change. I really want our CST resource to focus on, so if we're on the phone to people or people coming and see CST, I'd like it to be those who really need to do that, those that might be more vulnerable, those that need that focus. I was very conscious of comment actually that Councillor Waller made when she was talking about Luton Town and season tickets, and Councillor Waller I think said that they know to give you a ring to sort out your season ticket. I think that you said the other day, which I sort of listened to that and I thought, and that's sort of where I'm at really. If we have people in our community who need special support for whatever reason, that's what I'd like our dedicated CST resource to be able to facilitate. Somebody like me, I don't really want them spending their time helping me register for green waste. I can do that online myself, just like I do Amazon and my online banking. I would rather they spent their resource on people who need that support more than I do. And, and I think that's the direction of travel we want to go in. For those who can do things online, let's facilitate that. And for those who still need support, let's focus our resource on those individuals.
That's really clear. Thank you.
I'll take your questions at the end, if that's okay, Councillor Waller.
At the end of the whole section, not at the end of the particular topic number, are you saying?
No, at the end of the whole section. If
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine. That's fine.
Okay. If we go on then, the next thing we had was just a quick question from Councillor Powell, actually, that she asked me to ask. The IT hardware, 20k saving, obviously we're okay with that, but just out of interest, was this out of revenue or capital? And have the additional laptops that we've purchased for staff working from home come out of any COVID grants? I think we're just asking where the money came from.
Yeah, revenue, it's a revenue saving, and COVID grant has been used to spend on the additional laptops and what have you.
Okay, lovely. Councillor McCarthy, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, mine's a question about saving PLA 023, which is the Oakland Town bus service. As I read this, am I correct in thinking?
Hang on, wait. Councillor McCarthy, we haven't got to that yet. We're going through in order. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So if we go on to PLA 010, which is the grounds maintenance, there was quite a bit of discussion on this. Would somebody like to take that up, please? Councillor Oxley, would you like to go first before Councillor Brown?
Well, Councillor Brown was actually at the meeting, so I'll wait for Councillor Brown and then I'll make my point.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. This is an interesting one. I won't go into too much detail on it, but I'm just wondering why we're not considering doing a retender on this for April next year. This is, we've got the opportunity to retender it, and I would suspect there's more money to be saved in doing that. And therefore, the 14k this year is a fairly small number compared to the potential over the next 3 years for grounds maintenance. Also, you know, I'm concerned about the adverse position we're going to have, having moved to the plant life good practice. We seem to be moving back. In fact, we seem to have moved back already into a position where we're just doing a 1 metre cut, with the risks that brings to the increase in weeds and increase in hedge growth beyond the immediate hedges. So I'm not convinced on this one, I have to say. And I think there's bigger savings to be had by putting some serious work into the retender.
Councillor Stevenson, would you like to take up on that, please?
Yeah, very happy to take that. I'm hoping Councillor Brown's going to be 50% pleased and 50% not as pleased, but bear with me. I've picked this up with the Head of Environmental Services, and we've agreed that we are going to continue with the plant life regime for this season, because it's actually, once you've sort of contracted that 1 metre width in March and then the full width, the full cut in September, it's difficult to stop halfway. So that saving is, and I'm hoping Sav will concur with what Sav has discussed with staff. So we will be keeping the plant life regime for this season. And then I agree, Councillor Brown, we will be looking at the re-procurement of the whole grounds maintenance. And I agree that there are probably bigger fish to be had, but the date in that re-procurement will be happening in 22-23 with the start of the new contract in April 23. And I know from handover, Councillor Brown, that is the part that will not be pleasing you greatly, but I have done my best on that because I did take that point in handover.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Brown, Gordon Brown?
No.
No. Councillor Oxley.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, they've actually Councillor Brown had asked a question I was going to ask with regards to contracts. Also, what support are we looking to get from parish councils and residents in order to make savings? I think most parish councils actually have got supplemental contracts with the grounds maintenance team. So I'm just wondering if we could perhaps see if more could be done by encouraging local people to adopt verges, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Oxley. Completely agree, and I would suggest that that's very much part of the re-procurement process. Currently, we have 10 parish councils that procure their own verge maintenance within their 30-mile-an-hour limit, but obviously not forgetting that they get a precept from the council. So I'll leave you to work out who technically then is paying for that. I completely agree in terms of getting residents, getting parishes, and I think this ties in nicely with SAVs, with those overriding principles at the beginning of this paper, it is about empowering our communities, and it is working with others best placed to deliver the right options, particularly considering that environmental biodiversity impact. And as you know, well, as this panel knows, there are some elements of that covered by the biodiversity report from the Task and Finish group, and of course the members' climate action group. And I envisage them with our community network that together we'll end up with a with the right sort of contract that is suiting our budget and suiting the climate. So I hope that reassures you, Councillor Oxley.
Thank you. And also with the initiative which is just starting, the Rutland future conversation, that's something which could be built into the hopes that we have in order to engage with the community, because it may be that we're not asking the questions of the right people.
Absolutely agree. And again, hopefully with our development of the community climate network, this will absolutely ensure maximum engagement by as many people as possible about something that we all really care about.
Thank you, Councillor Oxley. Can we go on to Councillor McCarthy, please? You have your hands up.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, June. Yeah, Gordon and I talked about this at our pre-meet, which we seem to have changed our practices last year and then changed back again this year. But we did also mention, as Mark's just said, that parish councils take responsibility for some of their budget cutting. Is there any way we can try and push more to do that and take on that responsibility out of their own current budgets? Because it's you know, I've attended enough parish council meetings to know that they are reasonably well off and are often happy to start looking after these things, and I think they know their ground better than perhaps we might, a tier higher in government. So it might be a nice thing to do, and it might be a cost-effective thing to do.
Yep. And so I mean, as I say, we are committed to plant life for this season, but I would suggest that sort of what you've covered, Councillor Brown, Councillor Oxley, vigorous nods from Councillor Hemsley, I would anticipate that that would be fully part of the procurement process, fully utilising parish forum, and hopefully coming up with a solution that is showing a saving, but also delivering on that biodiversity. I will say the one element where, with my highways hat on, visibility displays in terms of maintaining a safe highways network, unless I'm told by the DFT, that for me is non-negotiable on that point. Safety when driving is imperative. Sorry, slipping into another portfolio, Chair.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor McCarthy? Yeah, okay.
I was trying to get
we move on. Sorry?
Sav is asking for say something.
Oh, sorry, Sav.
Sorry, I
see your hand.
No, forgive me, I should have raised my virtual hand. Sorry, the issue of working with parishes and all that sort of thing, there is a project highlighted Appendix D, PLA 008, called Localism. The council recognises that some parishes do more than others, some don't do anything, some do quite a lot. We would like to have a conversation with parishes, as the members have indicated. Parishes may be in a better position than the council to do some things. It's not just about grass cutting. There might be other areas where we work together, play areas, a number of areas where that's possible. And hence that titled that localism project, we thought it might be advantageous to work out the different types of areas where there's that interplay or interaction with parishes, and then look at a discussion around a package of different type of things that we might look at differently, and that's why that project is described as a strategic project, shall we say. It's not just about the grass cutting.
Councillor Hensley, but if I bring you in now, am I not? Yeah, okay, please come in.
Just very quickly on the parish forum. The work that's being done is actually sort of highlighting best practice. So there's already been a report from one parish to the parish forum about benefits of wildflowering and other things. So there is an encouragement we can use the examples of those parishes, the 10 that already do their grounds maintenance. So we will try and bring that through to encourage other parishes to do similar things and take on other responsibilities. Thank you.
Okay, if we could go on to the next one, which is PLA 017 Green Waste. I believe Councillor Gordon Brown, you had a question on this.
I do, yes. I was looking at that, the £5 increase. I just interested to understand how the increase in cost generates a £5 increase in the green waste monies. It seems a very large increase in comparison to the total, based on just the collection charges, I presume it is, that we're incurring, given that we fully recovered our costs out of the £40 in this current year.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. Yeah, I'll take that one, but I might look to Sav just to help me on the accounting. My understanding was that this was a contract extension last year, and the cost increase was rounded so that it was easier, if necessary, to allow for inflationary costs in the following years. And I believe that was part of a paper last September. I'm thinking about those costs, but I might ask Sav for a bit of help on that one.
I could help you because I presented the key paper to.
That's what I thought, which is why I'm. Yes. Would you like to answer your own question, Councillor Brown? I think you'll do it very well.
Well, I seem to remember the inflationary increases that we put in would have taken it to something like £37.50 or thereabouts from the £35 it was previously. But we took the viewpoint that £40 was the right position to move to, and then we'd have a £20 charge for those that were on benefit. That was the broad position. The situation is that on the £40, I thought we were that's what I was, my understanding was we're recovering all our costs in this current year, i.e. 21-22, and therefore the increase in the BIFA charge, which we know we have in the contract extension, I'm just asking the question, is that what's causing the extra £5 in total?
Because we've already paid. Yeah, over to you, Sam.
There's an additional cost for 22. Andrew, nod your head if this is correct. There's an additional cost that comes into play only in 22-23, and therefore the additional. Hence, we're able to keep the charge as it was because that reflect the cost. Then, as the costs increase, we need to recover those costs. So there's there's cost increases again from 22-23 that didn't apply in 21-22.
And that is the cost that we're recovering. That's one of the costs we're recovering.
Correct. We can only recover, as you know, when we originally set the charge, we set it to recover costs. Right. But at that time, there's an additional cost related to 22-23. We didn't need to recover the 22-23 costs in 21-22. Hence, we keep it as it was. But obviously, that now changes.
Councillor Andrew Brown. Thank
you, Chair. Just a question about the increase for renewing the green waste charge by phone is £3. Yeah. And that's 6% of the total. I wondered why it was £3.
I'm assuming that's to cover admin costs as well, Councillor Brown, and also potentially it is more convenient if those who can do it online do it online. Yep. Is that right, Sav? Have I got that correct?
It is to cover the 10 or 15 minutes required for an operative to take your call, put it through, do all the necessary stuff. That's the difference. So, you know, that's why we're only going to charge it for those who phone up to do it, as opposed to those who do it online. There'll be no charge because there's no staff time involved.
Councillor Oxley, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Once again, when the charge was first proposed some years ago, I made the point that a lot of the people who garden, they should be encouraged to perhaps keep their green waste because it is quite a valuable resource, rather than putting it into a bin and a lorry comes and takes it away. If they could be encouraged to actually use it. I'm sure Oliver will be able to talk about the benefits of composting, but I can't see how or why gardeners would be wanting. I know wood is difficult to compost, but so can something be done to perhaps to try and persuade people not to use a green bin, but to actually compost their garden waste? Once again, we have tried in the past. I know it's down to individual choice, but it would be helpful, I think, if we could try and reduce the amount of waste that we are taking in that way.
Thank you, Councillor Oxley. And I mean, basically, you've hit the nail on the head from my point of view, in that it is about the waste hierarchy and what we are, whether it's sort of green waste, recycling, landfill. All of this is being explored and looked at in the waste strategy review that is taking part. And I'm hoping, looking at the chair, who I'm sure will nod vigorously, that this will come to scrutiny, so that precisely, Councillor Oxley, those sorts of things can be absolutely floated, discussed, looked at how we can encourage that sort of behaviour. In the background, though, there is a forthcoming environmental bill, which I believe may include statutory obligation to pick up green waste. But I think having those conversations is really important as we progress through this century.
Okay, so moving on then, if we go to PLA 00022, the transport car scheme. I think, who would like to take this up, because we're a little bit disappointed that there was only a 5k saving. Who would like to go first? Nick, you've got your hand up.
Well, you didn't need to go to it. You just asked the question. With a fleet of that many cars and the running costs, which somebody estimated at about 10k per year, and the reduction in the amount of travel required, particularly with more remote working and the potential for future remote working, £5,000 seems a relatively small amount, and wonder why it is so small, and whether or not actually we should sharpen our pencil a bit more.
Right, I'm happy to take that one, Chair. So I've obviously picked that up with the Senior Transport Manager. That's based on removing one car from the fleet. So that's literally phoning up Enterprise, who are the company that we go to, and asking the question, if we take one car out, what's the saving on that? The answer is 5k. To put a bit of context in, because I take your point, obviously the understanding is most of our officers have been working remotely, therefore who are using the pool cars. A lot of them are actually used for casework, which still needs to happen, so doing visits to homes, to people, etc. So it's not a case of attending meetings. Having said that, in June there is a full review of staff needs. So that is a conservative. We are immediately removing one car. It may well be in June, when staff need has been assessed, that we will be able to remove more cars. And so that's being reviewed. Also, Enterprise can provide things such as e-bikes and that sort of thing. So yes, it is a conservative saving at this stage, but it is a case of making sure we're not chopping off our noses to spite our face. It should also be noted that the actual cost in terms of running the scheme remains the same regardless of how many cars you have or don't have. If that answers your question, Councillor Beggy. Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. I lowered my hand instead of putting on the microphone. It does to some degree, and I'm pleased to know that you will keep it under review, because I'm sure, as with all these things, with better management of time and resources, that maybe we can be a bit harder on that going forward. But I thank you for your response.
Yeah, and also that's noted, and to reassure the Senior Transport Manager, to use casual language, is very much onto it.
Councillor Razal, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Many years ago, I used to be a fleet manager, but I won't tell you what it was. I just wonder, with the circumstances we've had and the very clear change in the way that people operate. And I suppose I could go back to doctors and nurses in the same way that we might look at our social workers. A lot of activity now is done on digital systems. AccuRx is one of them. And I wonder whether there's something we can learn from the last 12 months in the way that we've interacted with people, where we might say, actually, instead of 1 car, let's get rid of 4 cars and see what happens. Because if it isn't right, we can bring them back. But maybe we can make a bigger step.
I take that point, Councillor Rozelle, but I'd be really mindful if we're going off to see vulnerable people. It's really, it's a bit like the minibus fleet. I would want to be very clear what the potential impact is. I think it's one thing being not turning up to a meeting, but to suddenly not make that house visit that's really needed, I'd be very uncomfortable with, but I absolutely take your point.
Councillor Begg, you still have your hand up. Is there a supplementary?
There is a supplementary. It's just for my own information. Do we have a record or know at what point and how many points all 11 vehicles are actually in use at the same time?
Yes, I don't know that data off the top of my head, but the senior transport manager is absolutely meticulous in terms of precise usage of each car, how many miles, etc., etc. I suspect that I could get that data for you if you wanted. I definitely don't have it to hand now, though.
I think my question was: Are we aware there are periods where all 11 cars are being utilised at the same time?
Yes, although speaking to the manager today, there is a case where I think we can probably cut down a bit, because there is a preference for booking a car that perhaps isn't being used by somebody else. It's easier to book a car for a whole day rather than say for the specific 2 hours that you may or may not need it. So completely take your point, Councillor Beggy, and as I say, the transport manager is very aware of those nuances and aware of the need to make savings.
Okay, if we can move on to PLA 023, which is the Oakland Town Bus Service. Can we discuss this? Who would like to go first? Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. So we've got here, can I assume from this that we are buying a bus?
No, we've got an in-house fleet. Was there a further question, Councillor McCarthy? I've got lots of information for you. Ask me another question.
I didn't know whether I've misunderstood this or not. So the council currently provides the Oakham Hopper from
Centre. Do you want me to give you the back?
That was a contract service, and we are now bringing that more in-house. If we've got our own fleet, how is it coming more in-house, and how does that represent the
right? Shall I just explain how that works currently, what we're proposing and what that would look like in practice? So currently, we contract that service to Centre Bus. So we pay Centre Bus, they do the hop around in Oakham. What we're saying is actually, looking at our fleet of minibuses, we will be able to bring that service in-house so that we are actually organising the timetable, if you like, without paying Centre Bus. Obviously, there's a cost in terms of paying our driver, making sure that we sufficient vehicles, etc. The proposal is that we will run that in-house for a period of 12 months, in which time Oakham Town Council will need to decide if they're going to be like Uppingham and actually run their own bus, or if they're going to pay Rutland County Council to run it for them. There is also the opportunity for some partnership working between Oakham Town Council and, let's say, Barleythorpe Town Council under the 2017 Bus Act. That is within the radius. Going any further, you fall foul of that one. Even a possibility of working with Braunston Parish Council, that's just within the radius, I gather. So it is, and sorry to keep quoting that opening of the report, it is about empowering communities to do things for themselves. The other good thing is we have got an excellent example in Uppingham, where Uppingham took it upon themselves to basically procure and run their own community bus service. So we're allowing a 12-month grace period just so that Oakham Town Council can sort of get themselves organised. And the other really good thing with the flexibility, so long as we allow a reasonable notice to our to the passengers, you can actually alter it as and when things are sort of quite popular. So it's a sort of opportunity for that empowerment as outlined in 2.2.2 of the main report.
Thank you. So we're going to ditch centre bus and take this on using our own minibuses.
Yeah, it's subject. This paper needs to be approved by members in June. If it is approved in June, then we will need to serve a 3-month notice period to centre bus as per contract. So that would look, if it is approved, that will look at the 1st of October for commencement of that in-house service.
Thank you.
I can't remember who had their hand up first. So, Councillor Oxley?
I think it was actually Councillor Rozelle.
Councillor Rozelle then.
Thank you, Councillor Oxley. There's a statement of the blindingly obvious here. It's the Oakham town bus. So I'm applauding loudly that to the town that it works in, and there is an excellent example in Uppingham, which I'm really, I hope Oakham can follow. Is that achievable, do you think, within the next 12 months? Do you think there's an appetite for that? If I can ask that portfolio builder.
An appetite within Oakham Town Council? Oh, sorry, you're on mute. Is that a nod for yes with that?
Sorry. Yes, please. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, very happy to talk to Oakham Town Council, but I am mindful of the overriding principles with which we need to run our authority, and that is about empowering the community to do things for themselves. And I think, I know that the hopper is really important for some of our residents, and hopefully Oakham Town Council will be responsive to that and deliver on their duties as their elected body for their residents.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councillor Oxley.
Thank you. Yes, following on from that, it's not actually Uppingham Town Council that runs the hopper. It's a community group, and I understand that they borrowed funds to buy the hopper. They don't charge anything, and they just they drive around. They've got volunteer drivers. They've got volunteer all sorts to run it. And I think the person who actually organises the anyway. So it's nothing really to do with the town council. It was just a few well-intentioned individuals that actually came out of a response to the Oakham hopper, because of the fact that for many years Rutland County Council were subsidising a bus which only really benefited the people of Oakham in the hopper. In fact, I'm surprised to see it's 57. It used to be 63,000. I think 10 years ago, it was 63,000 we were paying, what the county was paying for it. So as far as the Uppingham hopper, as I say, that's run by volunteers, and it's not very much to do with the town council. And say I welcome the fact that perhaps finally sense will prevail, and a bus which is only really benefiting the people of Oakham will be looked at in more detail. There are other options though. There is a bus service, a dial direct, where you can phone and you can actually make an appointment. I probably don't need to tell you. It only goes as far as Gleyston though, as I understand it.
Yeah, the DRT is in the parts of the county where we haven't got, as it were, routed bus services with centre bus. So it tends to be more over towards Lincolnshire border, and the DRT service we procure with Lincolnshire County Council. In terms of the hopper, yeah, I mean, I've mentioned Oakham Town Council because obviously they are the elected body for Oakham. There are many models that will work, but there is good learning to be done from Uppingham, the Uppingham Hopper Group, because of course they've really worked on that and they've shown that it can be done and it can work.
I would say be using well-intentioned volunteers, and I think they've got quite a good team over there, and that's one thing that, anyway, we'll see how it pans out. But taking out the Oakham Hopper hopefully will focus attention on the need to get a bus back into Oakham, and so perhaps that will be that will have the desired effect. We'll wait and see.
Councillor Beggy.
I moved. You say that when we move the Hopper, obviously gives 3 months notice on the contract. Will the removal of this contract from Centre Bus have any knock-on implications on other Centre Bus contracts and hence potentially be a false saving?
No, all the contracts are procured in their own right. So the answer is no.
Councillor Gordon, oh, sorry, Councillor Gordon Brown.
Thank you, Chair. This is a subject quite close to my heart. It's double taxation. I think members of Cabinet and Savile have heard me talk about this before. We have a situation where the people out in the parishes are basically paying for this bus. They're also paying through the council tax for the other buses. They're paying for playgrounds, maintenance and inspection in Oakham. They're paying for the cemetery in Oakham. They're paying for the grass cutting in Oakham through the council tax. Yet in their own parishes, through the precept, they're also paying for playground maintenance, inspection, they're paying for cemetery, etc. So I think there's a whole issue around here about double taxation. And I think Scrutiny will hear me banging on about this in the weeks and months to come and years to come, because I think it's a fairly fundamental issue. And one of the solutions to this is if Oakham Town Council don't want to take this on, then the County Council can raise a special precept and provide the service directly from that precept. I'm sure Sav would hate that to happen because it means much more work for him and for Andrea, but it is one way of actually taking the money from the residents in the same way that parish councils take the money through precept for their residents to carry out very similar services. So I just say double taxation. If you want to hear it from me again, I could keep saying it.
Thank you, noted.
And this isn't,
Oxley.
thank you, yes, just to say that all bus services are subsidised. So we have to maximise the potential of every single one of them. And I totally concur with everything that Gordon has just said. If it wasn't for a task and finish group set up to look at street lights, we would still be paying £130,000 for Oakham street lights, left over from the times when it was Oakham Rural District Council. So it is, say, we have to treat every single taxpayer in exactly the same way, and it is ridiculous that somebody in Empingham or Caldecott or Essendine is paying for a bus which is running around the streets of Oakham. So
Councillor Oxley, can we move on, please, because we've got a lot still to go through.
I just wanted to make that.
Board.
Thank you.
So moving on then, I've lost my way now. Right, PLA 035. Why? Who would like to ask about that? With 60k cost on the capital budget. Shall I ask the question to make it easier?
Please do.
Yeah. Why is there a 60k cost on the capital budget to make a 60k saving on the reoccurring budget? It doesn't make sense. Please explain.
Right, I will start off with this one. Oh no, or Sav, do you want to go for it?
No, I'd be delighted to listen to your explanation of the difference between capital and revenue funding. And I think as I'm missing good TV tonight, then I suggest you do that for a couple of minutes so we can all have a bit of fun. No,
brilliant. So obviously Sav will be keeping his ears out. So in terms of obviously our revenue budget is ongoing maintenance works that might be flagged up through Fix My Street. It's reactive. It's got a finite pot. As we know, with local government finance or our particular budget, it is the revenue budget that we are trying to save 2.4 million on. How am I doing so far, Sav?
Very good.
Excellent. This is encouraging stuff. Phew. So this is about saving money from the revenue budget. Therefore, any money that we are spending will come from capital, and it will be within our planned highways maintenance programme. In practice, this means that we will be having those niggly day-to-day revenue things that might pop up through Fix My Street. Those won't be dealt with. There will be possibly more of an onus on landowners to keep an eye on the maintenance of their rights of way. But I think I've pretty much explained it, but Sav, do add in extra detail if necessary.
No, I think let's go back to those asking the question and see if your explanation did the job.
Can I just clarify that basically you're capitalising revenue?
We're taking it out of our, no, we're not. I'm looking at Andrew. I think that we're planning that within our capital maintenance programme.
Yeah. Basically, we are removing some revenue budget and we are doing more planned maintenance work in relation to rights of way, which will be funded by capital, for which we get a government grant. And that's why we're able to do it. If we had no capital government grant, it would be, we wouldn't be able to take that work away.
Are we happy with that? Yeah. So if we move on to PLA 042, which is the Arts Development Support saving, can someone take that up, please? Because we've had certain members of the public who have emailed in to say how unhappy they are with it. So can we have a discussion, please? Who would like to go first? Oh, Councillor Rizal.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's probably right to say that cuts of this kind are incredibly difficult for communities, whether those communities are large, you know, Oakham, Uppingham, or whether they're small villages where perhaps some of these events are key to that community in how it develops and how it has that sort of social interaction. But I'm drawn to the requirement to be really, really careful about what we're spending this year. I don't think Sav could have been any clearer in the briefings that he's given us, that we're going to have to make difficult decisions. And those difficult decisions will never sit easily with every member of the of council, and equally with every member in Rutland. I look at this and it's quite sad, but I think it's absolutely necessary that we take prudent measures now, rather than wait until we're in a very, very difficult situation. That doesn't make it easy for the villages and organisations that have these groups that put on live shows and so forth. But we've got to make difficult decisions. If we kick it down the road, then we've got to make another difficult decision, or actually the decision may be taken away from us. So I support it, but I really do understand how difficult it will be for some communities.
Does anybody else want to come in? Councillor Brown, Gordon Brown.
Very briefly, I'm just wondering if the portfolio holder has any ideas if there's other funding available through the Arts Council or other mechanisms, or even whether, in fact, well, I know parish councils have powers to raise funds for this sort of activity. Is there any reason why the parish council shouldn't be assisting, particularly these local activities? And I know I've got one in my village, and I'm sure they'll be on the phone to me tomorrow asking that question.
Yeah, very happy to answer that. As many of the panel know, this particular area of my portfolio is very close to my heart. Nobody likes making savings on things, and this, as I know Sav knows, I found particularly hard. Having said that, I completely understand, as Councillor Rizal has very eloquently put, we are where we are, and for me this actually strengthens that growing argument about fairer funding and actually how we view rural deprivation. I think that this is an absolute example. When you don't get fair funding from the government, you start cutting on all sorts of things that actually have a really positive impact on our communities, whether the towns, the villages, etc. And this is where it really, really, really hurts. And so on that front, I've already had a meeting with Live and Local Arts for Rutland to discuss how we can work together, work in partnership to redress this balance. Currently, the Arts Council England does match funding. So it takes support, evidence of support is by local authorities giving money. I'm going to organise a meeting with them because, to be fair to rural communities, they need to understand that we need the opportunity to demonstrate our support in a way that isn't fiscal, because actually there is an argument we need the Arts Council funding far more than a city, far more than an urban counterpart. So that's one prong of attack. I will also be raising that question in terms of individual parishes. So for example, the cost to put on one of the live and local events is actually £250. So I think that's not out of the ballpark for a parish council to say, right, £250 and we get this lovely event. So back to those overarching principles of empowering our communities to help themselves. The other thing, the leader and I have put this on our list to raise with the MP, because as I say, this is an example where rural communities, I don't care how many Range Rovers there are, everybody has a right to be able to access decent cultural opportunities, and dare I say it, with a low carbon emission. We are building in carbon emissions just to access a basic human need of live music or the theatre. So I'm not resting on this one, but our argument is outside of Rutland and it is a national argument which I will be pursuing. I'm hoping when I've got some answers that Parish Forum will let me present there, and I'm very happy to come back to this scrutiny panel. As you can hear, I'm feeling very strongly about this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon-Brown, do you have a supplementary, or you're on mute? Councillor Ian Rozelle, you have your hand up.
Chair, thank you. It was just to say that Oakham Town Council do provide funding for live events. So there is very clear precedent in the county for parish councils, town councils to offer support. So I think it's worthy of note that Oakham Town Council, the Deputy Mayoress, has been very, very positive about it, and all credit to her. So I think that's something perhaps parish councils could follow.
Councillor Mccarthy.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've seen the representations from the public as well about this, and 10,800 saving that we've got here is obviously necessary, and I agree with everything Ian said. I also think it'd be great if the parish councils can plug the gap in the short term, and I wonder whether if we are able to find extra fleet savings, as we talked about a little bit earlier, whether we might be able to in future step back in and help out here if it looks like these things are going to disappear altogether. So maybe we could look at this again in 12 months.
Yeah, no, I've noted that one. I'm fairly sure we can't shift money between different bits of portfolios, but I mean, obviously reviewing things, we have got a cultural, we will be having a review of all our cultural services at some point, because I know that's probably will come up under libraries and that sort of thing. But I certainly think an individual's right to a rich opportunity for culture is a right, and therefore it is worth exploring every avenue to make sure that hole is plugged. I do think the communities are going to have to step up as well and help us. We're in this together and we work together and pull in the same direction.
Thanks. Also, Chair, I wonder, are we able to have a 2-3 minute comfort break in a moment? Because we have still got quite a bit left to go through as well, haven't we?
We've got a few, just 3 or 4 on section B. If we could have a comfort break then, that would be good. Would that be agreeable? Yeah, okay. So cracking on, if we go to PLA 04, the library service, who would like to take this up? No one? Shall I say what we had? We were okay with saving of 20,000, but we were asking where the other ideas were. Could we get volunteers to run the smaller libraries? Could we get the parish councils to take over the running of some of the smaller ones, I think, and also with the mobile library, there's only a saving of £8,000. Are we mothballing the mini? Are we mothballing the bus, or are we selling it? And is there a value for that?
Right, if I start with the first part, I mean, it's worth noting that some of our smaller libraries already have volunteers running them, and I believe Councillor Brown-Ketton is very heavily involved with the running of its library. No, not at the bit, but you've got volunteers, I think. No, not yet, sorry.
Ryle's got the volunteers on a Saturday.
That's it, sorry.
And Ketton were looking to sell, the council's looking to sell the building to the parish council.
Yeah, so in terms of creative ideas and keeping libraries going, I would take that as being part of the cultural offer and part of the review of that. I'm certainly supportive of any creative ideas, volunteers making the library theirs. I could see a model whereby RCC is, if you like, providing the books and the training to run a library. But as I say, I think that's part of a bigger piece of work. In terms of the mobile library, and I'm looking at Mr. Merry just to check I've got this right. I may have got the details wrong. My understanding is our mobile library is coming to the end of its life expectancy, and I think its value is around that of scrap. So I'm afraid it's not going to be making us £1 zillion unless you can think of a decent second-hand bookseller, which, you know, could help there. I think the reason it is an £8,000 saving is because obviously there is a little bit of money needed for the order and delivery service, and I think that's about, is that about right, Mr. Merry? Brilliant.
Okay, we happy with that? Shall we crack on with PLA 054, the economic development? We agree with the saving, but we're not very happy with the revised offer. Who would like to take that up? Nick Beggy?
You see the mobile?
Nick Beggy?
Well, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It is
Or did you want to take that up, Councillor Beggy?
Sorry, I've just got my eyes really playing up at the moment. I'm just trying to.
All right. Shall I get Councillor Oxley to take over?
Do you mind if I just go off camera for 2 minutes and put some eye drops in? I'm struggling.
Yeah. Councillor Oxley, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Yes, this is the one item on the proposals which I must say that I have got very grave concerns with regards to the council proposing to facilitate rather than lead the regeneration adaptation of the high streets, with 4 Oakham and Uppingham First taking the lead role for their respective towns. And I've spoken to the town mayor of Uppingham. I think I mentioned earlier that it's very important that we engage with parish councils, town councils, in order to maximise the potential of those bodies. And he was very surprised to hear that the council was proposing, this council was proposing to facilitate Uppingham First taking the lead role for Uppingham. And he the first thing he said was, well, that's why were we not asked that question? Why were we not consulted? And he believes that there are other individuals in the town who have just as much knowledge and understanding of the needs of the town, rather than a group of well-intentioned individuals who many believe are not actually wholly representative of the whole business community in the town. And I would urge that we actually consult with the town council before that decision is finally made, in order to get their opinion on how they could help and serve the town of Uppingham themselves. And it may be that Uppingham First is one part of that, but there, as I say, I think it's vitally important that the town council is involved in this decision. And I would urge this committee to contact the town council and get it perhaps made an agenda item. And then we could hear their opinion on how Uppingham can help to facilitate this proposal.
Can I go in as well on that? I think actually the savings are that we are not going to actually, we've got a vacancy. Is that correct? Who would like to, yeah, Oliver's shaking his head. I believe that sort of like when you read through it, we've actually not going to replace a member of staff, and I think that's where the actual saving is. Would somebody like to agree with that or take that up, please?
Do you want to cover that one, Sav?
Yeah, I understand exactly the point that Councillor Oxley is making. The substantive saving being put forward is around a vacancy which we won't replace. The point the note makes is that we will, our role as an enabling authority will be to help others to take the lead on certain issues. Now, of course, I understand the point that Councillor Oxley says that Uppingham First might be questionable in terms of whether they are the right body to do that or not. I understand that. I'll take that back and feed that back to the director so we can talk about that. But I don't think that issue is pertinent to the substantive saving that we're putting on the table. But I will take that away and check that position. In fact, I mean, Oliver's got his hand up, so I'm sure he might be able to amplify.
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, Mark, I appreciate your comment there, and we will certainly take it back and work with it. So I will talk with the senior officer, and we will liaise with Uppingham and Oakland Town Councils about how they would want to go forward. So thank you very much for raising it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Beggy, you have your hand up. You're on mute.
Sorry, I can now see again. Yeah, it's similar to Mark's comment, really, and having been involved in the for Oakham, I know it's not part of substantive saving, but I concur that we do need to look further into how various groups work together and the role of RCC within that. So I just wanted to make that part of the minutes.
Could we just go on to? I know we're coming to the end, Cal, so please be patient for just a second. Cemetery, I think that Gordon's already brought that up, actually, about that we feel that OTC ought to take up the mantle to take up the ownership of their own cemetery. So really that comes to the end of our the panel. So Councillor Oxley, you got your hand up, and then I'll go to Councillor Waller, because I think she's been waiting very patiently.
Sorry, just to very quickly say that the only cemeteries in Uppingham are closed cemeteries that RCC administer, and the town council actually administers, it has its own cemetery on the Leicester Road and on London Road.
And for clarity, the town council, if they're open, they actually maintain those, do they, in Uppingham?
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
So really, Oakham ought to maintain their own.
I can't speak for Oakham. I can only say that the closed cemeteries are administered by RCC, and the open cemeteries are administered by the town council in Uppingham.
Right. Okay,
But we cut the grass. It's part, sorry, RCC cuts the grass in the closed cemeteries.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Waller, the floor is yours. You've been very patient.
No, thank you very much, Chairman. I only put my hand up in case you'd forgotten me.
Never.
Very quickly on that last point, it's something I've actually had to deal with in this last week. RCC both maintain and check the closed cemeteries, and by checking they make sure that they're still safe, you know, that there aren't wobbly headstones, that sort of thing that could fall on someone. What I don't know is whether we legally are required to, or whether we could pass that duty on to someone else. And if we could, I think perhaps we should, but there we are. So from the beginning, can I ask, this is RES 004, can I ask that where we are saving on printed materials, that two things. First, that any staff who has a need for a printed material because of disability reasons, that they can still have them. And secondly, with the timing changes, that those of us who have to have council papers, whether it's staff or councillors, that we still get them in a timely fashion, because I appreciate what we're doing. But I'm just thinking about practicalities here. So that's my question on that. If anyone wants to answer them at the end, they can. I'll just go through them. I think that's the simplest way of doing it. On PLA 010, the grounds maintenance, I listened to the discussion, but I wasn't quite sure from what was being said whether the 14,000 we're not going to make the saving in this year. And if that's the case, can that be clarified either later on this evening or at a cabinet meeting? I mean, in fact, possibly taken out, I don't know. RES 012. That doesn't make sense. Oh, yes, it does. I've gone out of order, apologies. 012. I'm very concerned about this one. This is the customer service. I'm not concerned about what is being proposed. I think it is absolutely the right direction of travel. What I'm concerned about is that the saving is the saving in this year. So this is my question to do with that. If we're not introducing my account until the summer, June, July, and it will take some time to get bedded in and to get accepted by people, and there will still be a demand for our more traditional phone services and etc. in the meantime, are we allowing enough time for our residents to become au fait with the new ways of working, or does the saving represent an overlap period, if you see what I mean? Because what I don't want is lots of residents complaining that we then have to pass on to officers, that ends up taking a lot more time and costs a lot more money because we haven't got the alternative systems in place long enough for people to get used to them. And indeed, in terms of IT systems, testing that they work. So that's my question on that one. On
hang on, do you want to give Sav a chance to come back on that quickly?
Yeah, sure.
On that one, or
well, on all of them, Sav, up to now, if you like.
Yeah, on the 14 calendar version, we'll withdraw that one because I think, as Councillor Stevenson said, that won't happen this year. So obviously, I will omit that from the final papers. In terms of printing, then staff. We treat staff like adults. We encourage them to print less, but we've said clearly where there is a need for you to do so, then please proceed. So, most staff understand the financial position we're in and are doing the utmost they can to help. In relation to the CST issues, yeah, it's something we're actively working on at the moment, looking at the way people request services or issues that come in, and how that might change in the future and what we can do to change things. So, for example, building on a recent experience we had lots of people, when there were issues with BIFA and the collection of bins, we had an inordinate number of calls coming to CST, lots of calls. All CST were able to do was pass on messages from the operational team to customers. Those messages we put on the web, so actually members of the public didn't hear anything that they couldn't have couldn't read on the web. And CST couldn't help with supplementary things that they simply didn't know the answers to. So one of the things that we've got to look at is to encourage our residents to access or gain information in different ways. And we are looking actively now on how we do that. I mean, given that the saving is £10,000, if we can't achieve it because the time isn't right or we need things to bed in, then we won't. Let's not rush to the fire. But what I will say is that we are actively looking at how we can engender some of that behavioural change from residents. The fact that we're going to reduce the phone hours mean we will free up time, because people won't be able to get us on the phone as much as they did before if reduced to 20 hours as opposed to 35. So that in itself will create a shift. But we are actively working with CST now on how to reduce the number of calls we get. Why are people ringing us? Is there a need for that? Is it because our website is not navigable or whatever the issues are? So to me, this is so fundamental to the transformation of the way people engage with the council that I want to get this right rather than rush to a 10 grand saving, but that's what we're targeting.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Waller, could I stop you in full flow and could we just have a 3-minute comfort break? Would you be okay with that?
I'd love that.
Okay, so it's 52. Can we say we'll be back at 56, 57? Yes? Okay. Right, we're back now. So, Councillor Waller, would you like to continue, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Right, PLA 022, the staff car scheme. When we first got the staff cars, the reason we did it was because it worked out a lot cheaper than paying car allowances for a whole raft of people who were designated essential car users. In the review of this and what we need, if we are doing far or having far fewer people using their cars, or using cars rather, and far fewer miles, and that they're being approved in the first place, can we include in the review going back to a car user scheme? Clearly, we would not want to say to staff, you can use it willy-nilly. It would have to be approved by the line manager. But we may find that that works out in the long run cheaper. Now we've got fewer people driving. So that's a request, please, to the portfolio holder to include that. Thank you very much, portfolio holder. PLA 025, have we actually asked the schools whether they're prepared to pay the charge? Because I think this one could potentially have unintended consequences in that schools might say yes, but then pass the charge on to parents. And clearly, if parents are short of money, they might not be able to pay. I think it works out as £12.50 a child to have the bike training. And that in turn could make our children less safe when they go out on their bicycles. So I would ask the portfolio holders for that one to actually do a bit more research before the decision is made. If at the end of the day, the schools say no, there is still a decision to make because we still have to make a saving. I fully understand that, but I'd like to make the decision in full knowledge, please. So that's the question.
Yeah, could I just be really clear that the staff are very sensitive, if you like, to equality of access. For example, we've identified some children that don't have bikes in order to be able to take part. The officers are using the My Bike scheme to make sure that all children can take part with that. So that is to reassure that staff are very sensitive to that. I will certainly double check it. I also, if you like, share your perception of the difficulty of that decision in terms of encouraging safe road use, but officers are very aware and very thorough, ensuring that children do get access to that, and we will keep a watching eye on it.
Thank you. I mean, it certainly hasn't been raised at a governor's meeting I've been at recently in terms of another call on our budget, because I suspect that the school where I'm a governor would have to say no.
Yeah, thank you. Noted. And as I say, a bit of a watching brief on that one. So far, officers are confident that the bikeability will go ahead. And in fact, some staff have now sort of got their additional qualifications so they can do it solo, but I will keep an eye on that, and I will certainly get sort of clarification of detail for that.
Thank you very much. Moving on to PLA 035, the public rights of way issues and the walking. I'm a little bit concerned about this one. I do understand the principles behind it, and I accept them all. But we're recently or currently involved in this Rutland conversation, and one of the messages we're getting back is that walking is a very popular leisure pastime, and it is good for you. And for a number of us, styles are a challenge, and a number of our residents also, when they walk with their dogs, and unless there's a dog gate, styles are a real challenge for dogs. So as this one is progressed, and I'm not saying we can't do it, because clearly, we've got to make savings. Can we prioritize areas that are well used by, or potentially well used, the general area, by people who really need the kissing gates to have the kissing gates, if you see what I mean. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, just to assure, again, the officers who deal with this have a very up-to-date, very good working knowledge of those rights of way and, of course, the popular ones. As with anything, then it will come down to choices when we're doing our capital planned maintenance, basically getting the best value for money. And at some point, when those capital maintenance programmes come up, elected members will be making choices on, is it a kissing gate, is it an improved footpath, and that's the position that we're in. But certainly those considerations of accessibility are very close to officers' hearts, and of course my own. It should be noted that we've actually had quite a few kissing gates put in across the county, but I do take your point about styles.
Okay, thank you. Can I also ask that if there are some difficulties with regard to kissing gates in terms of financing them, that we also ask the parish councils in those areas if they want to contribute, because some would, because some routes are valued more highly by our parishes. And I'm speaking from experience here of long debates in parish council meetings. So can that just be fed into the thinking, please?
Yeah, no problem. And again, I mean, that's the sort of thing with parishes when they think about 106 monies and that sort of thing, what they are prioritising in terms of capital investment for the improvement of their communities.
Thank you. And my final bit on this particular section is about the printed leaflets. Now, I understand why they want, the move is to have them electronic. Printed leaflets are very useful. The ones we have at present for our walking routes are beautiful to look at, you know, with all the colours and everything. Actually, what people who are walking need is a nice, clear route map. And a lot of us just can't follow on a mobile phone, even assuming we've got signal. So what gets put online, can it be a nice, simple black and white that will print off at home on an A4 so that people have access to what they need, even if they're printing it themselves, please? Rather than the fancy stuff that doesn't print very well on black and white, because it was never intended to be a black and white leaflet. Portfolio holder? Is that okay?
Yeah, was that specifically for maps and that sort of thing?
Well, that's what most of these leaflets are about. So yeah. Chairman, do you want me to stop now? Because Councillor Brown's got his hand up and it's obviously in relation to this point.
Yeah, thanks. Just a comment, Councillor Waller, about dogs. There's nothing in this legislation to allow a provision for dogs. So any landowner can maintain their style and make it not easy for a dog to get through or over. So I've had this issue in a village in my ward recently, where a person has basically blocked off dogs. You can still climb over, but dogs can't. You have to carry the dog over. So there's nothing to stop the landowner doing that.
Thank you.
Councillor Rozelle.
Chair, thank you. I'm just interested whether we have the capacity tonight to talk about operational requirements or whether we're focused on the budget itself.
Yeah,
I think the two are bound up in one, because if we are not enabled through a scrutiny meeting to put forward our concerns and have the portfolio holders say, yes, I'm going to take them on board, or no, I'm not. And up to now, Lucy's been fantastically saying yes. But if we haven't got that opportunity, then the only option we get at full council is to vote against. And I would much rather vote for, because I am confident that my concerns have been dealt with. So may I continue?
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
But can we try and, I know you've been waiting to the end, but we're now at sort of like 9:10, Gail. So can we sort of like go through it a bit quickly if we can, please?
I'll speak more quickly if I can. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
please.
The PLA 042, I think we have another potential unintended consequence, specifically in relation to live and local. The live and local money that we've got in this saving is not a huge sum. The actual events not only are generally speaking out in the sticks and are attended by people who wouldn't otherwise attend live events, but for many of those people, the elderly in particular, they don't drive, and so they don't get to other, they can't nip over to Leicester to go to the theatre or nip down to Corby. It's just not a possibility for them because our public transport doesn't run at the times performances are on. So in terms of well-being, individual well-being, I am concerned that if we remove that, that's it, then we will be in a situation where we suddenly get more of a demand on our adult social care services because the one bit of lifeline that individuals have had is no more. There's also the issue that for many of our halls, our village halls, the money they make ancillary to the actual performance, through running a bar or having refreshments or having a raffle, is actually what keeps them going. And even if they only have one or two a year, that's one or two slots of money making that disappear.
Councillor Waller,
may I please finish?
Have long speeches. Please keep it to questions.
I am keeping it as brief as I can to make my point, because my question is this: we are proposing making the saving this year. I do agree that we should be asking our parishes to generate this income, and it shouldn't come from us. I've got no problem with that, but they can't do it this year because they have already set their precept, and they would only be able to do it through grant, and they are limited to the amount of grant they can give out. It's a proportion of number of people in the parish. So I would ask that that one gets delayed until they are in a position to actually do it, because some parishes not all, but some parishes in my ward actually don't really have any reserves that this could come out of. Some do, but some don't. So I'm asking just the live and local bit of that to be delayed for a year. And I'd like the portfolio holder to consider that prior to cabinet, please. And that's my question. Will you do that, please, portfolio holder?
Yes, I'm just whizzing through some notes. When I met John, who runs the live and local, I think there will still be performances up, I think, till September, but I'm going to email you afterwards when I've just had a chance to flick through my notes. All of the things that you say, I completely understand, which is why, as I said in the previous part of the meeting, I do want to speak to the Arts Council England so they understand just how difficult it is for an authority like Rutland, and basically can parishes be able to do that. So I've taken all your points on board, Councillor Waller, many of which I completely sympathise with, as you know.
Happy to have further conversation outside this meeting, either by email or phone, Lucy.
Brilliant.
And that's the end of what I had on this section, Chairman.
Okay, Ian Liddell, can you have your hand up? Can we be really brief on this, because we've been on this section for quite some time now?
Yeah, absolutely, and very quickly. It's clear to me that we have to make difficult decisions. We could probably be very passionate about each one of the items we've discussed tonight and agree that we move them to the following year. That would make us unviable as a council. I don't agree that we should kick them down the road.
Okay. So moving on then, this report is asking us to note and review the proposed changes. I think officers have clarified for us where we have queries, and we've given our opinions on the proposals, and obviously some of the portfolio holders will come back with additional information as we have requested. So am I on track, Joe? You're on mute, darling.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so if we move on to the last section, which is section C. Don't think we had really that much on that to go through. Has anybody got anything to discuss on that? Oh, Councillor Brown, sorry.
Yeah, just a technical point. I was a couple of things. The commuted sum reserve. I should admit this. I wasn't aware that we had a commuted sum reserve, and I thought commuted sums was relation to affordable homes. But is there another commuted sum? What does that entail? And the other one was the commercial properties review of provision levels. I would have thought if we released provisions, and I presume it's in relation to debt, etc., that wouldn't be a recurring benefit year on year. If we release the provision, then that's a one-off, not a recurring situation.
Sav, would you like to answer that?
Yes, in relation to the commuted sums, then developers pay contributions when the council adopts parks and open spaces, and we use those contributions over a period of time to offset costs. We are drawing down some funds from our commuted sum reserve to pay for costs, and we're simply going to draw those sums down quicker. In relation to, what was the second point, beg your pardon? It was to do with the
provisions.
Yeah, forgive me. Well, what's the reference for that? Is that in
page
appendix
45? Big page 45.
Sorry, I'm on the screen, so I can't.
All right. Appendix C, third page.
Oh yeah, sorry. That's yes. That's why it's yes, you're right. It would be if there is a benefit, it would be one-off, and that's why it's a sort of budget reprofiling rather than anything else.
Okay. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody else have any other comments at all or questions? Okay. Councillor Waller, do you want to come in? Have you got a question at all?
I've nothing on C. I have a few on D. Thank you.
Moving on to section D then, which I can't even find on here. Do we have any questions on section D? Councillor Brown. Gordon Brown. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarity, there was some confusion earlier this evening on PLA 024, bus service number 47. This is not the Uppingham to Leicester service. This is the Oakham, Uppingham, Peterborough service, which runs to the King's School in Peterborough. And there was some debate about that at the pre-meeting. I suspect on Appendix D, we're not really here, Chair, or maybe Sav and Karen and the rest of the team can advise. These are other ideas which have yet to come forward, and therefore we're not really putting any major effort into that this evening. It's more for information purposes rather than for detailed debate.
Things to be looked at in the future. Yeah.
Councillor Oxley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's with regards to, I've lost it now, the garages. I thought that we had got rid of all of our properties. So I was surprised to read the council still owns 88 garages. And I was just wondering how that could be. Garages are an important asset to towns with limited spaces. I'm just trying to find the number. I guess everybody knows where it is. And I'm just wondering why we still have them. Oh, perhaps it's in Appendix E. I do apologise. Is it okay to be talking about Appendix E? Not yet.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Councillor Beggy, did you have anything on section D before we move on?
Just a quickie on culture, particularly on, I suppose, on the castle, just to ensure that actually we are maximising the revenue opportunities from those, and that the targets set for sales within those, for example, for weddings, etc., are maximised.
The short answer is yes, Councillor Beggy. Generating revenue, we feel that particularly keenly within the cultural heritage neck of the woods, because obviously we're quite straightforward for cuts, and we are passionate about boosting our revenue.
Councillor Waller, do you have a final question on this section?
On D, yes. Can I first of all though thank Councillor Brown for his clarification that we're talking about the R47 and not the 47. That's actually quite helpful and negates an awful lot of what I said last night. Can I ask that, I know these reviews are all for the future, but the future's got to come quite quickly if we're going to make our savings overall over the next few years. And so I hope when they come to us individually that we get some comparisons with other authorities. The Places Directorate is usually very good at doing that, but it makes it easier for us if we know that we've been offering a Rolls Royce and other places are offering a Mini. So can I ask that happens generally? As a question, can I ask it?
Yes, please, but this has gone through, we've had this in our last meeting, our private meeting, that we were making recommendations to council, to cabinet for this to happen. So please, can we keep on the subject for tonight, please?
Well, this is about Appendix D. And also when these reviews happen, PLA 018, 019, 020 and 024, can they please be done in conjunction with the People Directorate, because they could all have unintended consequences on the education of our children and young people. That was my only other point on Appendix D. Thank you.
Okay, moving on swiftly, can we go on to Appendix E, please? Do we,
Can I make my point about garages now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just, as I say, I was very surprised to discover that we still had one or two, there are 80, or is it 89 garages, which I believe is quite a substantial number across the county. And I'm just wondering how we still manage to keep so many. And wouldn't it be easier just to offer them 88 garages across 5 locations? And wouldn't it be easier just to offer them all to Spire Homes? That's my question.
Who would like to answer that, please?
Well, I'll have a go. I can't remember I don't know the full history of the garages, but I know that Spire Homes gave us a series of garages a few years ago. I think, Andrew, that's correct, isn't it? How many was it? Can you remember?
I think it's the majority. I think it's the majority that of the 88 were returned to us from Spire a few years ago. There was a council report where it was discussed. I can't find it at the minute.
I'm selling them at a good price, Councillor Oxley, if you want one. 50 grand to you.
Can I ask that we sort of like find out and reply to come back on this, please, rather than sort of like just wasting time on it, please?
Well, we're not, forgive me, we're not wasting time. We've got them back from Spire Homes. There's nothing more to add.
Okay, right. Okay, moving on, Councillor Brown.
Just for my own information, Jules House, I don't know what it is or where it is. And you've got Jules House Review Service.
That was on Adams from his house last night.
It's basically where the youth services are, Councillor Brown, but it would have been discussed in last night's scrutiny because it sits under children's.
Okay.
So Council Wilby would probably be worth pinging an email to if you wanted a sort of overview.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCarthy. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I'm off mute now. Yeah, it was PLA 053, the Active Hub Rutland. That definitely needs to become self-financing, in my opinion. I think that, so if that's other ideas that can come in, there's the potential for 11,000 there, if we could encourage that into being some sort of self-financing project.
This is an adults and health, I believe, as well. So I think that was discussed last night.
It slightly comes under leisure, under me, but noted, Abigail, but yes.
Okay, moving on, Councillor Waller.
Sorry, thank you. The Active Rutland Hub is definitely listed as a places one on these papers, but I want to apologise to members of the committee because my comment about working with people, it was actually the transport ones in E, not D. I got my appendices incorrect, so apologies.
Okay, so do we have any more questions at all? No, so I would like to actually thank Sav nodding his head. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I would really like to thank Sav for all his hard work and also his team for putting together a very thorough report for us. Also to thank Oliver, Lucy, Karen, the portfolio holders for being here to answer our questions. And I would like to close the meeting at 9:25. Thank you all very much for attending. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Well done.
Thank you.